welcome to Changing the Game. This is season 7 of Changing the Game, where we're talking all about target market nesting and how to turn likes into loyalty. Whether you've been with us since the beginning or you're just getting started with target market nesting or you've seen some success, over the next 3 episodes, you're going to get to hear from 3 other NM advisors on things that they've done, particularly to generate more success in their business by really targeting their particular markets. And then on the alternating weeks in between our webinars, we'll continue the conversation over on Facebook and our NM Marketing Playmakers group. So be sure to join us there if you're not already in there. And we'll be recapping some of the highlights from each speaker as well on social media. So if you haven't been with us before, what we'll be doing today is we'll kick off our topic. We'll spend about 10 minutes with Emily on our topic, and then we'll open it up for Q&A. So if you have some questions, it'd be great if you start to think about those. Feel free to add those to the chat, and we'll make sure that we can address those in our time that we have together. And then for those future episodes, we'll be communicating those out on LinkedIn, Facebook. So just make sure you're following us there or you're getting the notifications so you can hear about our future segments that are coming out in the next few weeks as well. So as I said, this week we're talking about, or this season, we're talking about changing the game and turning likes into loyalty with target market nesting. I'm joined by advisor Emily Halal. And welcome. It's great to have you with us. And I know we get a chance to spend some time together before today's session and learn a little bit more about what you're doing and the success that you've been having, especially around LinkedIn. That's worked so well for you and your target market. So I'm excited to go more in depth with that. But would love to have you kick us off, Emily, on just telling everybody a little bit more about your practice, how long you've been an advisor, a little bit about what your practice looks like at this point.
Yes, absolutely. I am excited to be here today, and it's nice to see some familiar names on here. So I'm an advisor about to hit my 4-year mark, October 7th, out of our West Houston district office, Houston network office, Readers network office. It has been a journey, and a big part, if you've heard my name or have talked to me at all, you know that LinkedIn has been a major tool in success in my business. So I'm excited to share some insight there today. Just a little bit about me. I went to University of the Incarnate Word. I graduated in 2019 with a biology major, psychology minor. So clearly didn't really think that I would be getting into an industry like this. I shadowed physical therapists for 300 hours. I was super set on going into PT school and just kind of hit a burnout one day. I was like, you know what, more school, it's not for me. What's out there? I hopped on Indeed.com, at some point submitted my resume to Northwestern Mutual, and here we are 4 years later. So it's worked out pretty well, but this, wasn't at all what I envisioned myself to do with my life. So
I know we talked about you being one of the rare people that you applied for NM before they reached out to you. But it's worked out for you, and excited to go more in depth around that evolution, because I know as we're talking today about target markets, it's changed for you over time. So as we get into our topic, tell us a little bit about how finding your target market has really been impactful on your business.
Yeah, so at first, I think when you come into Northwestern Mutual as a new rep, you're not selective at all when it comes to who you're working with. If anybody breathes, you'll take a meeting. It's kind of how it is the first few months. But as you know, I was doing a lot of activity, doing all of the things that Grandam tells me to do, but not seeing that turn into production. I know that I had to get a little bit more nitpicky on who was getting a slot on my calendar, a time slot on my calendar. And so I really started to identify, what are the markets that have worked for me? What are the markets that I'm seeing convert into production? And for me, it was blue collar. I've always been really good in that space, construction, project managers, estimators, pipeline engineers, whatever it may be. That's initially what I started with. Household incomes maybe of around 100 to 150 grand at most. I was really confident taking on those meetings on my own. And as I wanted to build and build and build on that same market in that same industry, you kind of just move up the food chain when it comes to the titles. So eventually I started chasing the business owners and the VPs and the presidents of those blue collar spaces. So I think it's important to really identify, what markets are working for you, and then kind of make a list of, okay, who has seniority and what's the title of that person as we build up the food chain and the food chain in those specific industries.
And Emily, I know you said that your target market has evolved a little bit over time, and there was a point in time where you kind of had this aha around LinkedIn and kind of where you could reach maybe more ideal clients. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Yep. So on LinkedIn, you can connect with, multiple people on a weekly basis, as you guys probably know if you're using LinkedIn at all. So my team eventually my team is the one who started to do it. But at first it was me sending out, tons of connection requests on a weekly basis in my specific industries or markets that I was chasing after. So I was really just filtering it out by job title and then by age. I was sending messages, trying to set meetings. And like I said, eventually trying to get into the better markets based on that initial industry that I had selected. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, and I think, did you say there was somebody that reached out to you on LinkedIn that then all of a sudden it was aha of like, oh my gosh, this is where I should be, and this is how I'm going to start to, really see some significant growth in my business. Is that right?
Yeah, so my kind of aha moment when I started using LinkedIn really heavily in my business was, within the first 6 months of joining Northwestern Mutual. I remember I was crying in my cubicle that day about to quit because I was just not having any luck writing lives or submitting business. And that day, somebody messaged me on LinkedIn asking to set a meeting. And it kind of clicked in my mind, why am I not using LinkedIn as a tool in my business? And so I got really serious about coming up with a system and a process and some type of outreach to really, like I said, target the specific markets I was trying to grow in. And from there, it took off. I've spoke to multiple different offices nationwide. I've created a LinkedIn course just on kind of what my language is and how I go about setting meetings on LinkedIn.
Right. And I know we're going to talk a little bit more about what the process is. And I think you also are going to be sharing a discounted link to that course too, if anybody wants to go into that after today's conversation as well. But tell us a little bit about kind of once you kind of figured out that market and you were going to use LinkedIn as your strategy, what's really worked for you? Any big surprises or big challenges that you've ran into as you continue this journey?
So my language evolves, and it's been evolving the last 3 years. It started off really basic, and then when that started to not work, I transformed it into something else. And then when that started to not work, I changed it to something else. So it's kind of keeping up with the times. Also, LinkedIn was not as popular as it was now 3 or 4 years ago. It's getting really spammy and polluted right now. Y'all probably get a lot of in mail, a lot of messages on a day-to-day basis that you probably don't even take the time to look at. So it's a matter of like personalizing your approach. So someone is actually clicking into your profile page and responding to your message because it's different, it's unique, it's not like the method or the process that everyone else is using when they're trying to get business on LinkedIn.
So tell us a little bit about results that you've seen and how things are different for you, because I know it's been a big part of your business.
Yeah, so I'm big, like I said, on personalization. So whenever I'm connecting with someone, I'm just sending a request. I'm not attaching a message to it. Most times people will still accept a request. And then I'm messaging someone with a connecting point. So whether it's something that I found on their profile page or whether it's, something similar in our backgrounds, I'll go in and I'll message, for example, if I'm, talking to someone with a background at Shell, oil and gas. My dad was with the company for 30 years. I used to intern with them. So I would say something along the lines of, hey, John, thanks so much for connecting with me. I hope Shell is treating you great. My dad was with the company for 30 years before retiring, and I interned back in college. Hope all is well. Wishing you guys have a great weekend. That's more likely to get a response from somebody than, hi, thanks for connecting. Hope you're great. I get 20 of those messages a day. So it's just that little touch of personalization that really helps me get a higher response rate on LinkedIn.
So a couple key things that I think that you mentioned that are different than some ways that other people do, and I think we talked about there's not one right way, and Emily, you've even shared that it's evolved for you over time. But a couple key things that I think that you mentioned is one is you just send a connection request and not a message in the initial connection request. But then when you get it back, that you actually make sure that you're personalizing that introduction, that that first line isn't something that you can just copy and paste from one person to another. So I think that's a very unique from what a lot of people may do in their process. So what kind of results has that led to for you and your business?
It's still a game of numbers. I would say how you actually set meetings with this method is just the consistency. Every single week you're doing the same thing and you are, evolving the process how it needs to be evolved. It's consistency though. Like if you kind of one and done it, it's not going to work. How I get the result is by doing the same thing on a weekly basis. LinkedIn can take a lot of time. At first, when I didn't have a team behind me, it was me going in every morning, allocating 45 minutes to an hour towards my LinkedIn processes and systems, and then making sure that I had, my LinkedIn always on a monitor in front of me throughout the day so I could respond quickly to anyone who was messaging me back. But then eventually, when I did hire a team, I'm delegating that. So I'm teaching them kind of what I look for on someone's page, who I want to connect with, what markets we're targeting, so that they can go in and do that almost as a full-time role. It's a gold mine on LinkedIn. There's so much potential business that's right in front of you if you're consistent and doing it every single week.
And I think what you said is typically you're sending out like 100 a week and setting 5 or 10. Is that
Yep.
right?
Yep. That's probably about where we're sitting right now.
Yeah.
So it's kind
So
of like,
think about, yeah, what that does for your business. If you're setting 5 or 10 other appointments with ideal people in your target market, how would that change your business?
I mean, it's incredible. So I think one thing to be mindful of is this doesn't replace dialing the phone and it doesn't replace prospecting and meetings. It's a supplement, but it's a really strong supplement. I went back and looked at my book of business from last year and the year before. Over half of it came from LinkedIn or somebody, referring me to somebody, but that initial set was from LinkedIn. So it's crazy if you use this thing right and you're consistent with it, man, it can, get you very, very far.
So let's talk a little bit about you were starting to describe a little bit about your process and what that looks like from sending the initial connection. Then you get a little bit more personal. Take us through a little bit more about like the steps that you've taken that have allowed you to really see success in your target market.
Yeah. So process wise, the steps that I've taken, I've mentioned already a little bit. I'm seeking the connection. I'm sending the request. They're accepting. I'm messaging them something personalized. Once they respond to that personalized intro message, then I'm sending kind of something that's templated out to try and set the meeting right after that. So I'm not having long conversations on LinkedIn. I'm not fighting objections. It's really like, hey, here's my initial message. Here's my message asking to set the meeting, and then we're leaving it be at that if they don't respond. So that second message, once somebody does respond to my intro message, kind of looks just like, I assume you work with a financial advisor too, or you may, use the language. I assume you hold a close relationship with a financial advisor, but I'd love to see how our team can complement the financial plan you have in place. So that language kind of takes out the objections of I already work with an advisor or I already have something in place. And then you say, are you open a lunch or a Zoom meeting next Monday or Wednesday? So it's strategic language. It takes away the objections. But like I said, if somebody does still hit you with an objection or they don't respond, you're not sitting here fighting on LinkedIn. It's a game of numbers. It's just being consistent, sending out those 100 connection requests every single week.
Yeah, and I think what you talked about with the consistency with it and everything is really important because that's what's really allowed you to kind of see what works and what doesn't work over time, giving it enough time, and then being able to make strategic decisions on what you want to change, what felt authentic to you, and what was generating results. I know a lot of the things we talk about too is just how to keep it simple, right? Which is sounds like what you've done. You've made it really simple for people to respond, which is what you want, is you just want them to hopefully respond. So not overcomplicating the messages in any way as you're reaching out. But Emily, what do you think is getting in the way of why other people aren't taking the same kind of approach to utilize LinkedIn as a key strategy for their target markets?
I mean, I think it just is in line with the industry that it's hard to be consistent with things when you don't see immediate results or get like immediate gratification. And it's just like a quitter's mentality, right? Like if you're doing something and it's not working, maybe for a few days, you're going to stop doing it. But if I would have stopped doing it rather than just perfecting my process, tweaking it, changing it to a point where then I saw that it could work, it's that's the problem. It's just people aren't consistent. They're giving up because it's not working rather than trying to tweak and manipulate it into something that could work.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's, like I said, there's several different ways. So hopefully maybe some of this resonates with you or gives you some things to think about. Otherwise, if this doesn't, we can definitely share some other avenues that we've seen success from other Interim advisors. And you'll probably get a taste of that in the next few weeks with some of our other guests as well. But we'll definitely be expanding besides LinkedIn. So Emily, I know LinkedIn isn't your only method. We'll talk a little bit more about some things there, but you also have done some like lunch and learns and some other things in your target market. Tell us how that's fit into the equation of going deeper with your nesting.
Yeah, so I'm a big fan of lunch and learns. Many of you are probably in like buildings with multiple companies on different floors. And so I've gone to every floor and asked if I can set up a lunch and learn and cater in for the office. And typically they're not going to say no. They may, pull a, oh, we already work with someone, and I'll say, expected, that's fine. I'd still love to do this for your team. So I'm big on that. Dallas, I see she's on here. We've spoke at car dealerships together before. And, a lot of the times they'll even provide the lunch, and it's just us coming in and giving their employees some insight on financial planning and what to do to save for their retirement. But as you guys probably know, once someone's working with you from one company, a small company to be specific, all of their friends are going to also start working with you too. People just have that natural instinct to trust what's known. And so once you build that credibility in a small company, you nest and you're in. Most people will take a meeting with you if you're strategically going about it correctly.
Well, we're going to open it up for questions just a minute. And I know we've got at least one in the chat, so feel free to add some more. When we get to questions, you can just unmute yourself and ask those as well. But before we do, we always want to make sure that we give everybody on the call like something very tangible, a try it at work tip. We kind of call it something you can do in the next 2 weeks, just like what would be that first step to get started with this and try something that we talked about today. Emily, what would you recommend for them?
I would say step one, if your profile is not up to date, get that up and running. So make sure you have a recent headshot on your profile. Make sure your about section is clear as to what you do. You're introducing your team on your page. Your education is up to date. I mean, just get your profile looking spiffy. So if someone's clicking into it, it's not like, oh, I can't really figure out what she does or what company she's with. Make sure they're very clear. That way you can start connecting and messaging and putting this process to work.
So you suggest like before you even start messaging, make sure that you have a strong profile. Is that right?
Totally. Yeah, that's step one in my course, actually.
Okay, terrific. Well, we'll open it up to questions. And to help you further with this, we also have a target market assessment. So if you're still trying to kind of even figure out what your markets are, you can just send us a message or drop your contact information in the chat. We'll make sure to send that target market assessment out to you as well. And let's turn it over to the question. We do have a question here from Caroline. Do you want to ask your question, Caroline?
Sure. First and foremost, thanks for speaking with everybody today, Emily. Lots of great notes. I was just curious, when you're setting the meeting or setting up the conversation with them, are you setting an approach? Are you setting a fact finder? How are you splitting that up? And then as well, like how do you transition into that from then asking if they're free to chat and then getting their email and setting them a calendar invite and things like that so that it's smooth?
Yeah, great questions. So typically I'll ask, in my meeting ask template, Are you free for a Zoom or a lunch next week if they're local in Houston? If they say yes, open to that, I'll say, what date and time is best? Awesome. What's the best phone and email that I can put on file and send a calendar invite to? So then I'm sending a calendar invite, and I'm sending my invite for an hour. My goal is to, yes, approach, but my goal is always to get the meeting into a fact finder. I think if somebody is open to hearing your approach, it's your job to navigate it into a fact finder. Because the opportunity is probably there if someone is agreeing to meet with you. So why not make sure that it gets into the fact, is how I see it. So after an approach, I'm not saying, does that sound good? Are you ready to move forward? I'm saying, well, tell me a little bit about you. Do you guys have any big changes or transitions coming up in the next, 2, 3, 4 years? What does life look like right now? And then we're going through goals, and we're talking about their vision and their values, and it's just naturally a fact finder at that point.
Emily, do you feel that because you have that profile updated and you've already connected with them and really started that relationship on LinkedIn, that by the time you get to the meeting, yeah, they've already made the decision that they're interested in maybe doing something with you?
Yeah, for sure. I think so. In my calendar invite, I'll include like our team website. I'll include some documents that I always send just on my intro invites. So they have a chance to look at all of that beforehand. And most times people are getting on the phone with me or getting on a Zoom call with me, like with questions ready to go or like topics ready to discuss. So it's just kind of putting in a little bit extra work beforehand to make sure that those meetings are usually going somewhere. And you have to keep in mind, it is taking a cold meeting to something a little bit more warm. Like there's a level of trust you have to build. So I'm very conversational in my approaches. I'm not really ever setting it up to a point where it feels like I'm just drilling them with questions. Like I want them to really open up and feel that it's a warm relationship, not something that came from LinkedIn and where I feel like a stranger.
Well, we have time for a couple more questions while you guys might be thinking about some you have. One of the other questions I think that came to my mind from our conversation, Emily, was you talked about continuous engagement of sharing your network, commenting on their content. So tell us about how does that fit into this approach?
Yeah, so I think it's important if you're going to do a lot of outreach on LinkedIn to make sure that you're commenting on people's posts and you're liking their posts and you're giving kudos to your clients. A lot of my content that I'm posting is polls. I'll ask for like insight or feedback or people to comment so they're engaging on my platform too. And I'm consistent every day, or at least every other day we're posting something. I want my name to be on somebody's feed all the time. Like I want my name to be recognized, even after I've maybe messaged them. And if they haven't responded, I want them to continue to see my name in case maybe I decide to message them again in the future. But I have clients or prospects all the time bring up my posts when we're on the phone or we're grabbing lunch. They will talk about my posts all the time. I remember my kind of like aha moment, figuring out, I need to post and be consistent was I posted that I went to a lunch with my college soccer coach. I like reunited with her. She took me to lunch. I posted about it and posted, just how much of a mentor she's been to me and how I've really, been developed into the woman I am today because of a lot of the skill sets she taught me. And I had like 3 people bring it up on the phone that week. Like, so cool. You went to lunch with your college coach. Like, how was that? And so I was like, you know what? I'm going to be really consistent with posting personal content, polls, travel, conferences, things I've learned, quotes, motivational Mondays, so that people have things to bring up when I'm talking to them.
And that's probably really important, I would think, is as you're reaching out to people, those new connections, the way the algorithm works is they're probably gonna be more likely to see content that you're posting right after they connect because they've just engaged with you, initiating that they want to receive some kind of connection and information from you. So if you connect with them, but then nothing is coming through, you're kind of missing that opportunity that Emily's talking about how do you reinforce that? How do you stay top of mind? Besides just the connection request to show that you're a thought leader and you're a real person and relatable as well by what they're seeing in your profile and in their feed. I think we have time for one more question. If somebody has a question, we'll open it up now. If you didn't get your question answered or you want to have more of an individual conversation, Emily, how can they best connect with you?
Yeah, I would say email is best. First dot last name at nm.com. Y'all could have guessed that one. But email me if you guys have any questions. Jen will also send out my course link if you guys want to actually, watch the videos, get the language, and the resource sheets. That'll all be included. So yeah, I'm happy to help and answer any further questions that you guys may have.
Great. And like I said, you can also join us at NM Marketing Playmakers on Facebook. We can continue the conversation over there of anything that you want to use the entire community to get feedback on your language or your process or anything that we didn't go into as much depth on today. As we kind of wrap things up for today, for joining us, Emily, we always want to say our appreciation at Playmaker Coach for having you share your resources and your expertise. And as part of that, would like to donate to a cause of your choice. What's an organization that you're passionate about that we could help support?
Oh, I love that. So there's an advisor in our office named Jimmy Siegel. He has a cornhole tournament every year that I'm actually a part of here in the next few weeks. And it's a school for kids with special needs, disabilities.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
I know how important that is. I have a couple nephews that have special needs, so I'd love to be able to support that. Resources for this week. So remember, we'll be getting out that link with Emily's course if you're interested in diving detail into all the tools and templates that she's put together. If you're interested in that target market assessment, you can put that in the chat, or we'll be sure to, if you want to email us, get that out to you as well. And then make sure to register for our next webinar, which will be in 2 weeks, same time on Thursday the 12th Thursday at noon on September 28th, where Belle Ives will be speaking. She's a representative out of Massachusetts, recently spoke at Gateway to Growth. And it's going to talk about how she really embraced her market. She works a lot in LGBTQ plus community and how to find her voice in her community. And then 2 weeks later on October 12th, Micah Engel, who spoke at annual meeting this year, is going to talk a little bit more specifically about some of the things he's doing and finding his market and what that looks like. So we hope you can join us for both of those. And as we wrap things up, remember Emily's try it at work tip for this week is start with your profile. How can you maximize your profile so that you're not just burning through those people that you're sending messages to, but you've got a great platform that when they do connect with you, that interests them in learning more. And one final thought for you today is, picture your life a year from now. Where are you spending your time? What are you doing? What big goals have you accomplished this past year? And how is life different? If you take some of the steps from today, you're going to feel so great. So it's so great to have all of you with us today. Thanks again, Emily, for your time. Be on the lookout for all of the highlights and the replay that we'll put out next week. And